Hey everyone. I'll be spending today just going through something that's probably going to take a few weeks to build. I thought in this video we would go through the schema, how that works, and getting set up with Gatsby. So the thing that we're going to be building is a very basic knowledge base. So essentially, what we're going to have is a page with categories, and then when you click on one of those categories, we will be taken to the category page, and then we will have all of the articles inside of that category. This is quite a simple setup, I'd say. Having worked with many complicated schemas over the past, I've tried to simplify how this works in the schema. So anybody that is new to Gatsby, GraphQL, um, React, and a headless CMS should be able to pick up some of these concepts and kind of build their own thing. So let's dive in. Let's have a look at what the schema looks like. So when you first log into Graph CMS, you'll be taken to this dashboard. If we open up the schema here, on the left-hand side, we can see a bunch of schemas that I've already created ahead of time. And at the moment, my colleague Runek is busy adding some content for me in here. So we should see that some of these are updated, and we might get notifications throughout the app because we've got other users logged in and doing stuff here. So bear in mind if there's anything is not returning data-wise, he's probably just not got around to updating that content. So yeah, let's have a look at the schema. I think to start from the top or from the bottom of the list here, the way our app is going to work, we're going to have an index page of categories. So our categories has some kind of icon that we can upload. It has a title, which is required. It's unique. We've also got a slug as well for the page. So if you were to go to the home page and click on one of these categories, you'll be taken to another page. And obviously, we use a slug in the URL, and so it's a bit more SEO friendly, instead of some random ID that you get from the API. Then we've got a description, which is just a multi-line text. This isn't to be anything fancy. It's not a rich text field. This is primarily, I believe, it's just going to be inside of these little cards we are going to create on the homepage, like a little description about what this category is. So, we'll find out. I've not seen the content, so this is going to be a surprise to me as well. And then we've also got the FAQs for the category. So the FAQs relate to articles. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to update the name of this to be articles because that makes more sense. Um, and then advanced here, there's nothing in here, but what we could do is we could hide this field if we wanted to from the CMS when editing. To be honest, we don't need to. We'll just leave that in there. In this description box, that's there primarily for when you're editing content throughout the app. You will see kind of little popovers to kind of give you a description about what is what, which is quite cool. So yeah, let's have a look at the article model. Article model has a title, which isn't required. We have a slug that is required and is unique. Has to be unique because if we are building unique pages in Gatsby, we obviously can't create pages with the same path because that's just not going to work. So we also have content. Content is a rich text field in this case. And the way that Graph CMS works is really nice because you can add any type of field you want to the page here. So if you want to include a date or a Boolean of something, we've got a Boolean here that is featured. You can kind of just click on one of these, give it a name, any validation options you can add in here, and then create it, and it's then added to the model, and that's automatically available through the GraphQL API. All the GraphQL types are generated automatically, and that's handled by the CMS. So that's cool. Relations here, article has relations. I'm guessing the article here. Let's update this. So let's do this together. So the article. An article will belong to a category, and it will belong to an author. So I'm just going to delete this field. I'm probably going to lose some data in the process here. And if we go to category, we switch to category and we go down to relation. what we'll do is we'll update this back to articles. I know we renamed it previously, but that was a union type. That was a bit weird. So we'll say this is an article. We'll allow multiple values, and then we'll configure the reverse field. I'm just going to keep this as a one-to-many. A category has many articles, and an article can belong to one category. And then we'll create that. Then an article, we'll also add a relation to the author. So this could be like published by or something. And we'll say this is the author model. An article doesn't have many authors, it just has one. But a article, am I on the right model? A article has, is that right? We'll go to the author model. It's always a bit easier to set that relation up. So we'll go to reference an article. An author has many articles. We will choose author has many, and we'll just leave that as a one-to-many. I think that schema is set up correctly. I guess we'll see. Have I chosen author? Just refresh this. I see what I did there. So I chose the author model. So we'll add on the author model, we will add, we'll choose article. Choose the article, not author model this time. And then we'll just save that as is. So an article now should have a reference to an author, and an article can only be authored by one person and can only belong to one model. That's why we see the fields here. So that's where we are with there. Let's look at the author. Author has a name, which is just string. It's unique. Doesn't have to be unique. In this case, people are named the same in life. There's not just one Jamie. And then, so let's make that just not unique. So it's a title field. And this title, let's use on relations. So when we query data, or use the UI rather, when we edit content, we can see through kind of the relation peek mode, like the list view. You kind of want to peek what the article is. We'll use the title to kind of show us what that means. So let's dive into some content now, and we'll see that the content will open up this first article. And I can see, because I deleted those relations before, that now we don't have any of these things kind of connected. So we'll need to go ahead and fix how that works. But let's first take a look at the API playground. And this is a great way to kind of get going. If you're familiar with graphical or GraphQL playground, you'll feel very at home with this setup. And what we can do is we can let's query for all of our categories, and then inside the categories, what we can get is maybe the ID if we want it, the title, and let's get the slug and description. And we run that query, and we can now see that we've got these kind of 3 categories that are returned to us from the CMS. Then that articles, because we created that relation, we can then query for article IDs. Now, I don't think we have anything connected. We do. We've got some articles connected now. Title, and let's grab the slug of those. So we can see in the pricing and billing record, category record, we have some articles that are connected. And then what we got now is we got one article here. Is this a free plan? And then we've got some other articles as well. We've got things like the slug for that as well. So if we're creating the individual article pages, we will be able to get that as well. So that might be very helpful. Now let's have a look at the author. I don't know if we've got any authors connected, but we've got that. Bear with me 1 second. So yeah, let's query for a few more things here. ID. If we scroll down, we can see the articles. We have the article ID and a name here, which is cool. We've got some things connected now, and these are all authored by Ronak and myself. So cool. We've got some data now, and this is really nice. I'm able just to use the graphical tool here to kind of see what fields are available. Obviously, we've got the docs here as well, so we can kind of go in and we can see if we wanted to get all the articles, we could. And we can see like what are all of the field arguments that are available. And then if we click on the type article, we can dive into that and we can see all of the fields that are available. So featured's a Boolean, content's a rich text, slug is a string that is required or non-nullable, and author, which connects to the author model. And various stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's a really handy tool when you are browsing documentation. You can see that. So yeah, now it's probably time to dive into actually connecting Graph CMS with Gatsby, and then we can start to make these same queries, but in the way Gatsby does. So let's dive into that now. If you've not heard of Gatsby, Gatsby is a static site generator. It's kind of built on GraphQL. It's completely GraphQL driven. It works in a way of plugins and data sources. So you're able to kind of plug in any type of data source and get going. In this case, we're going to use a plugin that we are working on here, Graph CMS, and it's Gatsby Source Graph CMS. And my colleague Jonathan has been working on this now, and it supports quite a bit of the API now. There's still a few things which are a work in progress because this is a beta, but most of it just works. So I just kind of wanted to take the time and kind of give this a try. I'd like to reiterate before I started the stream, I've not prepared anything. I've not looked at this. So what we do here is just mainly going to be me fumbling around, kind of getting going with how this works. And I've not kind of followed this through and used this plugin before. So this should be rather interesting. So inside of my terminal, I'm going to open up, let's just go to my folder, and we'll create a new folder for Gatsby Graph CMS knowledge base. So we've got this directory now. I'm just going to initialize a new Yarn workspace, or you could use npm if you wanted. And then I'm going to install Gatsby itself, then React DOM, and then we need to install that Gatsby source graph CMS, and we need to tag at next so it installs the next version of the plugin. So as those are updated, you will get those updates for free. So I'm just going to remove some of the background noise if you can hear that. While that's installing, let's go ahead and have a look at the config that's required here. So like all Gatsby projects, we must export a file that includes a list of all of our plugins, and then we kind of provide it a link to where we provide an env variable to the endpoint for where your content is stored. So we'll get that from Graph CMS in one moment, and I'll show you where to get that. As an extra precaution, it's always nice to provide a token, so not anybody can just make a query on your GraphQL API and to get everything. If you've got some sensitive data in there, or things that are maybe drafts or unpublished stuff, then you might not want everyone viewing that. So we can tweak the settings to accommodate that behavior and things that we want. Endpoint, yep, we've got that. Token, yep. Other things which we'll be using, probably not in this video, but in maybe in next week's video, is downloading local images and building the local markdown nodes. And this is cool because I'm able to use Graph CMS hosted images with Gatsby's own Gatsby image component. If you've not seen Gatsby image component, maybe so we can have a look now. Let's find out where this is. Let's just search their site, Gatsby image. It's really nice because what this allows us to do is kind of just render images on the page as they kind of scrolled in. We can blur them up. We can change the size. We can pretty much optimize them using the Transformer Sharp plugin. And this Gatsby image plugin will render images to the page. So we can kind of give it fixed or fluid width and height. And Gatsby kind of takes care of building those images remotely and presenting those to the page. And our plugin takes care of fetching all of the images from Graph CMS's CDN and then pulls them down locally. So when you're viewing a web page on a site today, you may look to use services such as Cloudinary or ImageX or any of the other image CDNs and transformation APIs because you want to get the image to the user as fast as possible. And one of the benefits of these other providers is they give you plugins to kind of blur up images or fetch when they're scrolled in. Well, Gatsby, that's kind of built in. So we can bring those images down, and wherever your website code is deployed to, you also will deploy the images alongside those as well. So there's no need to make network requests across the web and across the world to get images when they can just live alongside the site that your user is currently downloading. And that's really cool. It's one of the great things about Gatsby is that image component and the kind of the whole ecosystem around images. Build markdown nodes. That's also cool, I guess. That allows us to use the rich text. So on the article, in the schema for article, we've got this rich text field. So if we edit some content just to see what that looks like, you can see here that we've got some content in here. We've got like a list, a link, a GIF, a title of sorts. That's an H3. We're using what you see is what you get editor here. And this kind of compiles to Markdown as well. And then we're able to kind of build those nodes, Markdown nodes for the rich text field, which is cool. Fragments path, I've not used this yet. It's quite a new addition. So that's what I meant at the beginning. This thing is constantly being updated. So we'll probably not touch on that yet. But let's see if this has installed, and it has. So we're inside an empty directory here. So let's go ahead and open this in Visual Studio Code. And we've got some basic things here. So the one thing that I like to do inside of any package, you can obviously use a Gatsby Starter. And we have a Gatsby Starter for our blog, which comes with all of this configured. But let's live on the wild side. Let's configure all of this ourselves so we know exactly what's going on. And it's not too difficult. It's not too cumbersome to go ahead and add some scripts for this. So we'll add the build script, which is just Gatsby build. And we'll also use Gatsby clean because that's really helpful. And then dev, that will be Gatsby develop. So now we can just run Gatsby dev and it'll take what's in our folder here and get going. But there is one other thing, and obviously I mentioned those environment variables. So what we can do, we can install another plugin, and we'll set this as a dev dependency, and we'll call this .env, and then we can import that package into the config so we can get our environment variables from the server, from the process rather, where this is deployed to. This will be injected in, and locally we can kind of mimic that experience. So all that we need to do is obviously, once that's installed, is create an environment variable. And I'm going to grab these now just so we have them. Let's have a look at Graph CMS settings. I'll open the side panel here, API access, and this is the endpoint. Here we can see content can be queried from the publish stage, and content is automatically delivered from published. We don't have any mutations, so nobody can use this endpoint to submit mutations, because I would suggest creating an auth token and doing that on the server and not allowing people to use that token on the client, because there's going to be some funky entries. I can imagine that happening. Trust in the World Wide Web with API tokens. Not something you want to do. So let's say this is Graph CMS token, or endpoint rather. And we'll save that there. And next, we're going to go ahead and create Gatsby config.js. And if we have a look at the README here, steal this and save it. Anything fantastic here. Let's skip authorization because we've allowed public queries. Not too fussed about that. You can query content here, no problem. But yeah, so let's now go ahead and create a file index, and we're going to need to create this index file inside of source/pages, and then inside of there we can import React as we normally would, and I'm going to export a default function here, and that will just be called index page. We'll destructure some stuff in just a second, and then I'm going to return JSON.stringify. We'll return that data. So we'll just call this data for now, or props rather, and then we'll kind of just format this nicely. That should do. Next thing in Gatsby, what we need to do is we need to export a console page query, and this is simply a GraphQL query. And then we need to import that GraphQL. You import GraphQL from Gatsby. It's not a function, so I don't think it's a function here that we need to use. So it's not like this. GraphQL is a tag function. Yep, so we just use the template literals and write our query inside here. So yeah, let's first get this running so we know what query to create. So what we should be able to do is run npm run dev. And this should start up. It should grab the Graph CMS endpoint here, add it to the plugin, and go. So you must provide your Graph CMS endpoint URL, and that is because inside of here, I need to require .env and then invoke the config function. And if we run that once again, npm run dev, we shouldn't have any errors now, and we should be off to the races. But of course, this is live streaming, so we are going to get errors. So we could not get this package because I cannot spell. And if we cancel that, and third time lucky, we should have a running Gatsby project. So if I just scroll up here, we can see Gatsby Source Toolkit is running. It's fetch an author, fetch an asset, fetch an article, and fetch an category. Now, this is great. I can immediately see that the endpoint is working because there's no way this Gatsby project can even see what these models are, because these models are in fact coming from Graph CMS, and those are defined there. And then everything should be running on localhost 8000. So if I open that up, we can see this is, I'm console logging, not console logging, I'm printing to the page the props, and this is what Gatsby gets to it as props for each page. But if I open up graphical, I'm not sure if we'll be able to see just yet the Graph CMS. We can see the Graph CMS connection. So using the Explorer here, you can say, okay, the queries are kind of formatted a little weirdly. They're not formatted in the same way that maybe you're used to with using Graph CMS. And this is Gatsby. Gatsby's kind of renaming these, and these have to kind of conform to the standards that kind of Gatsby sets out. So if you're using Gatsby for other projects, this is really nice because you know that all query is going to conform to a certain set of standards. So when you are working across plugins, you don't need to kind of relearn the APIs of everything. The nodes kind of are all queried as a group and individually the same. So let's get the individual nodes for these. And like we did before, we can grab the title, the slug, and the ID. And if we just run this now, you'll see we are getting exactly what we got from Graph CMS. Then, yeah, what else do we have? We've got that description. One thing you'll notice here with this ID is it's prefixed with the name of the type. And we're doing that because that's just how Gatsby works to kind of relate these nodes. If you wanted to just get the ID, the same what you get from Graph CMS, then you need to query remote ID and you will just get that ID. Cool. So we're probably 26 minutes into the stream, and now we've kind of got our schema set up, and we've got Gatsby running, and Gatsby is now connected. What I would like to do is let's, for this page, let's create this query. We need the ID and the slug and title because we want to show those on the index page. So let's go ahead and copy that. And inside of our code editor, inside of index, we'll uncomment this and we will add this query. So what we should have when we head to localhost 8000 is if we restart the server, that query will run. I'll make a query to Gatsby. It'll get all of the Graph CMS categories and all of the nodes there. It'll get the title, slug ID, description, and then it's going to get the array of different articles. We don't need the array of articles on this page, but what I thought would be nice is to kind of show a little number. So, this category has this amount of articles. And then if we go to localhost 8000 again, you'll see in here that we have all of the nodes, which is really cool. So we get data and all Graph CMS categories. So let's go ahead and we'll destructure that. And we will say we want to get those. Because we know we're just destructuring nodes. Let's get nodes and let's destructure that. Destructure nodes from all Graph CMS categories and rename it to categories. And now if we kind of print to the page our categories, you'll see that all we see here is the categories and their related articles, which is cool. So this is going to be our index page. We're going to have links to all of these. So how do we do that? Well, if we want to create individual pages for the categories, then we need to use the Gatsby API. And that's probably something we'll do in the next video. So what can we do in this video to kind of finish up and leave it at a good point we can get going with? Why don't we create a unordered list, and for each of our categories we'll create links to. And this is not going to be perfectly designed in a way that I would maybe do this in a production application, but at the end of the day, we are creating something here just to kind of get the concepts and the basics across of kind of mapping that schema to the front end. So whatever the language be, you do this how you normally would. I'm just going to use React and Gatsby here. And I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to get this category and I'm going to return a list item. Because it's React, I need to provide this key. So I can say c.id because I already queried the ID. And then inside of here, let's go ahead and just return the title. Refresh the page. Title is not defined. We need to c.id, c.title, and then now we can see we've got an unordered list of all of our categories that are available. And then we could say, let's just, for now, we'll do we'll just do this. So we can see that pricing and billing has 5 articles. Getting started with Graph CMS has 2 articles, and contact and support has none. So that's just a quick and dirty way to do this. We'll improve this and make this a bit nicer. We can use some aggregate queries to get that later, but we'll add that for a later video. So let's finish this video by importing link from Gatsby. And instead of just listing these, we link to these pages. And then in the next video, we'll go ahead and create the individual pages for these categories. And then inside of the categories, we will list all of the articles. And then we'll go ahead and create the individual pages for the articles. So now let's have a look at the documentation for link. And it's just link Gatsby component. All the documentation is available at Gatsby here. So we import link from Gatsby, and then this is what it looks like. So it's going to go to a specific path. And in our case, it's going to be a dynamic path. So let's inside of here, we'll open up that, and using template literals, I'm going to say this is going to go to /c.slug. I don't want to prefix it with categories or anything because we're living on the edge here. And then let's just do this. So if we leave this here as it is and head to localhost 8000, you'll see now if I click on this and this article in this category and this final category, you'll see that it's going to /slug. And whatever the pages are here, it's going to go there. So hopefully this gives you some idea of how you can query data from Graph CMS with Gatsby using the new Gatsby source plugin and create some dynamic pages. And in the next video, we'll go ahead and create the pages for queries and the articles and what have you. So that should be fun. But if you've got any questions on what I've done today, feel free to reach out on Twitter, and we'll go through all of that in more detail. So I'm going to leave this video today, and we'll pick up in a few days' time, and we'll do the next stuff. Bye.